Thank you for staying with us on the program. I'm joined by two gentlemen. Incidentally, they are both lawyers. Let me start from my immediate left. Chief Abayomi Thomas is a constitutional lawyer and a public affairs commentator. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Good morning to you. Viasato, good morning to you.
Great. Then next to him is a gentleman, my friend would say he's dressed in corporate casual, whatever that means. But he's also a lawyer and a one-time member of the Edo State House of Assembly here. It's great to have you on the program too.
It's a pleasure to be back here.
Great.
Thank you.
Let's begin this discussion this morning from, let's have a historic perspective. Let me begin with you, Chief Thomas. We're told that Senator Omo Agege had been suspended on account of the statements he had made on the floor of the Senate. How do we begin to do an assessment of the weights of that statement as to how it became a basis for his suspension in the first place? Now, keep in mind that is important in light of the fact that it is that singular event that has led to where we are today about this whole issue.
Thank you very much. I would like to quickly correct one impression. Omo Agege's statement was not on the floor of the National Assembly. It is unparliamentary for legislators to discuss whether you accept the outcome of the discussion or not. You do not go to the press outside and begin to castigate your colleagues. Your legislative immunity and privileges ends on the floor of the legislature. The moment you leave that place and you go to the press and begin to castigate the majority decision, you lose your legislative privileges. That is the procedure in all democracies all over the world. In this particular case, the issue of electoral timetable for conducting elections, vis-a-vis holding the presidential election first or not, was debated at the National Assembly. And the National Assembly felt to avoid the effect of bandwagon, whereby a president wins the first election, everybody in Nigeria keep on, as we have been saying in the past. Let's reverse the timetable. He, Omo Agege, is representing the Labour Party from Delta State. Of course, we know why he's in Labour. He left the plenary, got some journalists together, and said, look, don't mind them. What they are doing there at the National Assembly, they are trying to target Mr. President. You had the opportunity of contributing at the plenary. You had the opportunity of disagreeing. And we all know that everything at the plenary is decided by a simple majority. So why would somebody who participated, even if, assuming he was not even there, assuming he was not even at the National Assembly, when the legislature took that decision, he cannot go back. It is an abuse of the privileges conferred on him by the legislature. So when he was now summoned to appear before the panel, he did not deny what he said outside the National Assembly. And of course, there are rules and regulations. There are ethics of Parliament. And for this reason, he was suspended. But rather than taking his suspension very well, with all due respect to him, I know him very well. We were first set of law students, University of Benin, in the same class. I know him very well. I didn't expect him to go to that extent he went. If you are suspended, you have two ways out of it. Write a letter of apology to the Parliament. I'm sorry for this that I admitted I did. The Parliament, in their own wisdom, will tender their letter of apology. Again, it will be voted on. And if they feel that you are remorseful, they will call you back. The second aspect is, if you feel that you are strong-headed, you don't want to have a teamwork, you head to the judiciary. If you feel that your rights have been infringed upon. But rather than that, he is alleged to have gotten what they carry last. Some boys, some hoodlums, who invaded the National Assembly because of his suspension. Why his suspension? One, I said because of his suspension. Two, why on suspension?
That was already an aberration. Is that the implication?
Already an aberration. Walked into the National Assembly, to the Senate, and with these hoodlums behind, they invaded the place and took away the symbol of authority of the Senate, which is the mace. Meanwhile, in this constituency, they were already protest that the Senate must recall him or there will be mayhem. So whether he personally took the mace or whether he directed the taking of the mace, the important thing is that you were on suspension. You were not supposed to be in the Senate. So if you were in the Senate and hoodlums came in, there can be the theory in law of conspiracy, no matter how remote it might look like. So this is where we are. A man who today is still unrepentant and is playing to the president's gallery, and the president has said nothing since this mess was stolen. And that is where our democracy is in serious problem.
Chief Thomas, you've made a very brilliant, concise analysis of this issue so far. But we can't talk about all of this and also look at the element of motivation. What could have motivated Senator Omoh Agege?
Look, Senator Omoh Agege never liked the Labour Party.
He never did.
No. He's my good friend. Omoh Agege is not a Labour man. He's a bourgeois. He has nothing to do with struggle for the poor masses. I repeat what I'm saying. 4 sets of law students to graduate from University of Benin. So he has never been in the bourgeois class. I mean in the struggle class for the poor masses. So he couldn't get the nomination of APC, but he was determined to contest at whatever level. Hence he went to Labour. So his Labour in writing, his APC in mind and in actions. And he felt by making noise, the presidency will recognize him. And you know the current presidency we have. When you dance to the gallery, they call you. They give you a job. So he was actually trying to draw attention of the presidency to him by saying what we have done, the work we have done. And the plenary is aimed at Mr. President.
But again, essentially, that's nothing better than hypothesis, because we can't actually, we can't independently say that's what it is. But the point you're making...
But that's what he said.
Exactly. But the point you're making, yeah, that's what he said.
That's what he said.
But you said he could have done that because, of course, if you play to the gallery, presidency could call you and then give you a job. Does it really need a job as a senator of the Federal Republic?
Excuse me, look at it.
Yes.
Recently, I don't want to mention the person's name. He's been making so much noise here and there. And recently, the president just called him and made him, he's a lawyer. Okay, I'll just go ahead straight. Festus Keyamo. Festus Keyamo, since Granit died, we know the kind of role my learned friend Festus Keyamo has been playing. But recently he was appointed. He had difficulty in the media defending his appointment by the presidency.
Why that?
Good, because he was supposed to be on the side. He has been known to be on the side of the masses, and the masses are currently suffering. So for him to take a juicy job and take it, we should remember during the period of Abacha, when Dr. Olu Onagoruwa, who was fighting for the masses, decided to accept the position of Attorney General from Abacha. Gani Faye called me back, said, come back, my friend. We are not supposed to have anything to do with this government. You come back. The man refused. What happened to Onagoruwa eventually, when he now said he couldn't understand Abacha? What happened to him? And how he lost his first son, and now history. So there was even a time the Nigerian Bar Association, I have a friend here, had to make a pronouncement that whoever is to be made Attorney General of Nigeria must be a senior advocate. Because lawyers were now helping the military to draft draconian decrees, even targeting them, all in this effort to make sure that the federal government, who has majority members in Nigerian Privileges Committee of Nigerian Association, do make them senior advocates after doing the hardest job for the military government. So if you want to become, in today's Nigeria, to become a very well-known person to the president, even if you were put yesterday in the bad books, even if you were being investigated by EFCC yesterday, today you join the APC, you are no more corrupt. This is where we are.
But Girahi, Chief Thomas here has made a point about how that Omo Agege has been playing to the gallery, and the president hasn't said a word. The presidency hasn't even given a statement, as it were, officially, about this whole drama, as it were, that we've seen so far. But really, let's face it, is this not supposed to be an entirely legislative issue? Is the presidency supposed to interfere?
Well, the president may not be required to interfere in a manner suggesting that he's now getting involved in legislative matters. But I also want to say that if you look at that issue, it has gone beyond a mere legislative matter to a serious national issue. Because the National Assembly, and of course the Senate chamber of it, belongs to the people of Nigeria. And that act of insurrection, as it were, not necessarily of an invasion by external elements into that hallowed chamber, is an affront on the sensibility and, of course, the integrity of the entire country. In that sense, one would have expected that the presidency, being the #1 office, so to speak, in this country, and the office that's in charge of all the security agencies, as it were, directly, ought to have, in one way or the other, made a statement condemning the invasion. It's expected of it, because if that wasn't done, and it has not been done as we have seen, is just another way of giving an approval to that act, and perhaps encouraging a reoccurrence. You see, while somebody like me, I'm not entirely surprised that the presidency did not say anything. Because like my learned senior said, Omo Agege decided, as it is not customary with most Nigerian office holders, to exercise his loyalty to an individual occupying the seat of Mr. President, as against the oath of office he took to be loyal to the laws and, of course, the country as a whole. So why do I say this? It's marks of psychophancy, sheer psychophancy. For Omo Agege, I understand it's a lawyer like my learned senior has given affirmation to. Is a lawyer who ought to know ordinarily that a law will not be made because of an individual. In the lawmaking process, laws are not made to target individuals. So if you have that understanding basically, and the name of Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari was not mentioned in the bill, and you now go out to say, oh, I know why this law is being made. It is meant to target the presidency. The presidency is not an individual. The presidency is not one man. The presidency is an institution that belongs to this country. One person might be on that seat today, tomorrow another person will come. So it is a law that is meant for posterity. It is a law that is not about to be amended because after Buhari would have left, then they would not change it. Except there is good reason for that amendment. And of course, to take its own natural process. You see, look at the stage that incident happened, the incident of the suspension. Mr. President had refused to assent to the bill, sent to it. after due consideration by the Senate, we want your assent in line with the constitutional provision, allowing this law to reorder the sequence of our election for good reason, because we are seeing that it is perhaps one of the debilitating factors militating against our democracy, where one party would have taken the so-called mighty federal government. It affects the other elections. Let us reorder our election in the way that it will flow from the bottom to the top, so that whatever it is, let the body not get bad from the head, because when the body gets bad from the head, it is usually cataclysmic in effect. So I believe that that was the intent behind the law. When it will now go to the presidency, they outrightly rejected the bill by not giving their assent. So the Senate was not to take the other option, the alternative that is available to it, by not vetoing the presidential assent and passing the law by second.
Is that appropriate in the circumstance?
Very appropriate. That is what the law says.
Okay.
They were being legal and they were being constitutional. They were on good ground. That we are justified to have made this thing to you. And your power in this regard is not absolute. That is what the law provides for. And that is what this whole sharing of power between the three arms of government is all about. If the president refuses to give assent for one reason or the other, we as a Senate can override that refusal. And that was the point they were before Omo Agege, who had never spoken to this time. Only because now he now knew that the president again was having an unsavory attitude towards the law. To now go out to say, oh, this thing, and I know is targeted at Mr. President. But again, and for me, that is an irresponsible and a reckless statement, unexpected of a senator.
So persons have said that this is overall a reflection of the weakness of the legislative structure in this country. Does your thoughts align with that position?
Verily, verily, my thought align with that. In fact, let me say this. Like quoting from Julius Caesar, William Shakespeare. Governance in Nigeria has become a tale told by an idiot, full of sounds and fury, signifying nothing. And why is that so? Because most of the persons who find themselves either in legislative position or even elective executive position got there other than by the means that is well recognized by the law. A flawed electoral system has thrown up people who ordinarily have no business with leadership. So one therefore is not surprised when people who ordinarily ought to bid at all to have that confidence that in the event that people elected me, I won on genuine balloting. If I go back to my people again, they will vote me again and again. So when you now find people now find this salvation, political salvation, electoral salvation, in one man, usually either a state governor or a president, as we have it in Nigeria, it is because they know deep down that they do not merit the position that they occupy, that the people did not actually vote for them. So that we have seen a manifestation of all that in all ramifications. We have seen senators, who have turned themselves into men entertainers. A duty of lawmaking that ought to be sober in all form. You see senators dancing and posting videos of their Makosa dance on social media.
But what does that tell you? That's a plenary, do they? That's a social event.
You must, as a lawyer,
yes,
you must. I'm talking about the profession we belong to. Thank God my learned senior is here. There is a level of sobriety that's expected in your conduct, whether you are in the courtroom or outside the courtroom.
And you think that applies to legislators?
It also applies to legislators.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Because they are in the business of lawmaking, and all of them, from the number one to the last person there, ought to be a role model
If I may
to the entire society.
I may quickly just support you. The real reason behind the motion or the passing to a bill, the reordering of elections, was for good candidates in the society to emerge and represent their people at the National Assembly and State House of Assembly. The reason being that if you do not hold presidential election first, if you don't hold governorship election first, no governor or president can hold you to ransom.
Right.
So it will give an opportunity for credible candidates to come out and contest for national and state assemblies. If you are to hold those ones first, I am not accountable to you. They will be accountable to us here. But the moment you hold presidential election, as we have seen it in Nigeria, a governor sit down and begin to pencil those who will represent local government at the House of Reps, and begin to pencil those who will represent zones of their state, regional district. Sit down and say, no, not you, it's you. When you are under that fear, that godfatherism, you end up having people dancing at the preliminary. Dance this way, dance this way. Tell the people, please record me. Let the people know I'm saying something. We have seen situations now where a senator spoke at the Senate and his cap was removed at the Benin airport. We have seen it. And they're not on the same political platform. So you can imagine if they were to be in the same party. A governor can now say, for speaking like this, like that, at the Senate, when I'm elected governor, next time I won't appoint you to go there.
So it becomes an issue of vendetta. Chief Thomas, you've made, for want of better words, random allusion to the election reordering. That brings, obviously, about the element of politics. Are we also politicking with all of these issues? Maybe over-politicking already?
We are over-politicking already. I say so because if you look at this issue, it is lack of party supremacy. If the political parties were what they should be, what they were under Action Group, NCNC, under SDP, SDP,
NRC. Yes.
If they were what they were under Unity Party of Nigeria and NPN, where there was party supremacy. Now, the crop of political parties we have now are all fingers, leprous fingers for a leprous hand. Whoever has the highest amount of money dictates what happens in the party. And that is why you now find governors being the leader of the party in a state. And you find the president being the leader of the party at national level. So when you now kowtow to the president and governor, simply because you want to go to a public office, you can't get the best out of Nigerians. Because I cannot, for instance, assuming I'm a politician, I cannot bend down for any governor or any president. I will go on my merit. If the people refuse to vote me in, so be it. I can never say, oh, because you are a president, I must come and polish your shoe so you can now endorse me. I don't need any endorsement. I will go to the delegates. I will speak to them. If they feel I'm good enough, they put me there. But that is not the situation now. No matter how good you are, because you do these elections of the governor and the president first. So for you to be able to win as a member of House of Assembly or National Assembly, you must be in the good books of the governor or the president. No longer on your merit. If you, by mistake, watch your NTA news and see the Senate, where you're supposed to have, is not 103 members, and see how many people you are seeing there present. Because they're not accountable to.
Could they be on the field, maybe having an oversight of constituency?
No. The truth is that they're not accountable to you and me. They are accountable to the governor. The governor has power to bring them back. And if you look at the House of Reps, you see the Green Chamber almost empty all the time. But if they know that they go there by your own mandate, by the laborers' mandate, and they come out to us, they will sit down and do their jobs.
Let's speed things up a bit here now. Barrister Girahi, Senator Omo Agege had gone to court to challenge the suspension, 90-day suspension, and of course he won. And then the Senate and the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, had also gone back to the same courts to overturn that position of the courts. And now the court says it stands. I mean, the man has been returned, he has resumed his duties at the Senate. That's where it stands right now. Just yesterday, he was invited by a joint committee, ad hoc committee, that is of the Senate and the House of Representatives. In the course of the day, we will know how that turned out really. But what does all of this say about not just our democracy, but our legislative procedure altogether?
You see, the first point to make in this matter is to say that, you see, there is almost a near anarchy in the system, and of course the governance of this country, bordering again on the diminishing quality of leadership that we have around. In fact, the first thing, or the first order Omo Agege got or obtained was an order that was almost tantamount to an immunity. But of course, we know that it's only the chief executive of states, talking about governor and deputy governor, president and his vice, that are immune against arrest and prosecution. But the court, there was a court order that said, you cannot arrest this man. You are hereby restrained. You understand? So it goes to show how much we have degenerated as a people. I tell you most assuredly that all of these would have been avoided and perhaps avoidable if only we are a law-respecting society. And it becomes a really tragic when you find that those that have to show the example about obeying law and order are themselves the one actually breaking the law. Without personalizing the matter about Omo Agege, all of the institutions of state, be the presidency, be the legislature, and even the judiciary, I make bold to say, have all sinned and have come short of the glory of God. That is what we are dealing with. How many of them actually follow the procedure? You know, it's akin to what a former president of the United States of America was quoted as saying, that it is criminal to be law-abiding in a lawless society. People have lost confidence. People have lost faith. Those who break the law in this country are the first to tell you to go to the court. Why that effrontery? Why that audacity? It is because they know that you do not have much hope going to the court.
So does that diminish the confidence of the public in the courts?
Of course, that's the point I'm making.
Of course.
It diminishes not just the ordinary masses of the society. I'm telling you that persons, you know, who ought to know better, will say to you, taking an election for instance, let us rig it first. If they are not satisfied, they can go to court, and they will rig the election at the height of impunity, and the wrong person will be declared as winner by the electoral umpire, using that word in quote. And at the end of the day, sorry sir, let me just conclude. At the end of the day, the wrong person gets elected, and his vicious cycle continue. So what are we not talking about? We must first and foremost, like this government promised us, although we all know it's a fake promise, only those who have things to gain will still not believe that the change that was promised to this society has indeed come. They promised that they were going to do things differently, but all that we have seen is a retrogression of the already bad situation that we found ourselves under this administration. Otherwise, the way to go about it is to put in place a reformation and a moral rejuvenation that will bring about seriousness. And that may not be forthcoming, because we have seen for the man that is today the president of Nigeria, who made so many promises, who made so many remarks before he was elected. Like remarks talking about, oh, what do I have to do with medical tourism? Why do I have to seek medical attention abroad? When the masses of Nigeria cannot afford medical services even at all. That man came to Edo State. He commissioned a gargantuan building in the name of a first-class medical center. And when he fell sick, I expected that he would have opted and asked to be brought to Edo to have medical attention.
Because it's not when he has the national hospital, for instance.
National hospital. National hospital. Thank you very much.
Why not Abuja?
If you do not want to stay in Abuja, Edo could be a safe haven for you to be attended to in our five-star medical center, which he himself commissioned. But every time the president has headache, common headache or checkup, even for 4 days,
36
to
times.
the United Kingdom.
36 times.
How dare can you tell me that you are serious about bringing about change? So because this whole thing bothers about bringing a real reformation, a real revolution.
You talked about
What I was trying to say.
You talked about breaking the circle. I mean, this vicious circle that we find ourselves in. We are trapped now. Is that what it means?
Definitely we are trapped. You see, if we were just trapped and we are not progressing beyond what Obasanjo, Yar'Adua, and Jonathan left, and we are just in status quo, it will be better.
So are we retrogressing?
We are retrogressing instead. We are trapped and we are moving backwards. I used to go for medical treatment abroad like Mr. President.
So he probably learned from you. Is that the point?
Since I'm a private citizen,
Yes, you can afford it.
I have never worked for any government in my life. In my life. I am 62 years old now. I have less than 62 years more to live. But I cannot even go since he came. His policies have made it impossible for me to go. When I was going, a naira was about 125 naira to a dollar. A pound was about 215 pound to 150 naira to 1 pound. But he told us that he will make 5 pounds into 1 naira. 5 naira into 1 pound. That dollar and pound naira will be the same thing. That change I have not seen.
Yes.
So I can go. I'm a private man. If my clients don't come, I can go. My clients who should come to me are suffering. My clients are suffering. And I am a man who depends on my clients. And my clients depend on sources of revenue, which are constantly dwindling every day. So what is the change? Negative change. You see, what I was trying to talk about this issue of Omogege winning. I am not going to take a wholesale swipe on judiciary. But I think judiciary is part of the problem. I remember I did a case involving the Benue State House of Assembly in 1992 or 91. Over this, between Ekpekio and the former speaker at that time, what's his name now? Okosu. And my ground of argument at the court was that, look, whatever they are doing within their hallowed chambers there is the internal affairs. It's internal affairs.
It's a business.
It's a business for which the courts have no jurisdiction. Now, if Omogege has gone to court and says his rights have been breached, how was it breached? That you ask him to go back. You see, when you begin to ask, it's like the judgment of our Socrates those days in Ife case, where there was a trespass in Ife Supreme Court. Nikki Toby. Somebody came to Supreme Court and said, look, I know I'm a trespasser. I have trespassed, but allow me to continue. Nikki Toby was then in Court of Appeal. He said, let me continue in my trespass because I'm appealing to Supreme Court. Nikki Toby said, no. What you're asking us to do is that is akin to that a sinner who comes to God I said, God, I know I'm a sinner. Please let me continue to sin until I get to where you are. Somebody that it was under the course, I want to take judicial notice of TV reporting. But this is a man that if a report was made, papers were filed, that he must have demanded the removal of bail. All these were before the judge. I'm talking of Justice Dimba. I don't have to hide it. Most of his judgments have been controversial. Now, all these things are before you. We say, go back. Now, if you say go back, what do you want to talk about people like Udume? Why is the Inspector General of Police refusing to appear before the Senate? Why are so many people being invited? Somebody recently told me, hey, you are a lawyer. You should know the difference between invited and summoned. If I summon you to come, did I use police to arrest you?
No.
That's an invitation. So I'm not interested in semantics. If I were to be in the shoes of Omo Agege as a lawyer, I will stay away from the National Assembly. If I'm invited to come or someone to come and there's a panel, I will go before the panel. I will be showing a good example to other legislators that we lawyers are different. We lawyers are on the higher pedestal. We lawyers have been trained. After the bishops, the lawyers are the next in the society. But for you to go and say, I'm going to resume tomorrow, the Senate is not for gangsters.
Now that you already mentioned Udume, let's just take it straight to that point where Udume is now in the picture. I mean, Udume is a man who has seen so much of controversy over time in this country. And now there's an allegation that he aided Senator Omo Agege as far as that invasion that led to the theft of the maize is concerned. How do we begin to make sense of that angle of this discussion?
It boils down to the same thing I'm saying. In a sane society, when such worthy allegations are made against a public officer, you sit down with your wife in your house and say, look, I am stepping down a bit temporarily. You don't go and sit down with the Senate and start to influence your native people to begin to join you in making noise. Udume and Omo Agege should have stayed away from chambers. If you are being accused of having aided and abetted Omo Agege in the stealing of the maize, the proper thing for Udume to have done, of course, it's used to controversy, was to step aside. We have seen the U.S. Congress, where a man has been accused of tapping the buttocks of a lady 10 years ago. The senator stepped aside last month and said, look, I have to step aside, allowing the Senate committee to do their job. But it is only in Nigeria that this kind of thing can happen, and the man will still go there and be posting and insulting everybody. Why? Because the Nigerian parliament does not have its own coercive agency. Nigerian parliament does not have its own police force. If the IG refuses to come before them, whom are you going to send to arrest the IG?
The same police, of course.
And who will now go there and salute IG and say, sir, I was just passing by. I was not asked to arrest you. This is the kind of country we are. Now, in America, they have their own sheriffs that they can send out. Our police here, our federal government system in Nigeria is over-centralized. The army is under the control of the president. The navy is under the control of the president. He is the commander-in-chief of everything, including the police in Benin. He is the commander-in-chief. Meanwhile, the governor in Benin is supposed to be the chief security officer, securing nobody, having control over nobody. So you find that Udume can go to that place, Omo Agege can go to that place, anybody who slap Bukola Saraki tomorrow, because the president don't like Bukola Saraki, we go back to that Senate. Nothing will happen to that person.
We are ready for a break in a moment, but just before we hit that break, let me come back to you quickly now, Barrister Ogiahi. now we have a situation in front of us. We can't pretend about it. Ndume is in the picture, of course. Now, going forward, how do we just create a scenario, a situation where we're able to resolve this in any way possible? Because keep in mind, too, that there has been this bad blood running between the Senate and the presidency. It's either about budgets or it's about some asset declaration from the Senate president. He said not to have filled properly some years ago. Yes. All of these are pillars in the conversation we're having right now. We can't take it away. But going forward, as I said, how do we begin to see the possibility of resolving all of this?
Well, it's going to be one that we must approach radically. Radically. And I'm not optimistic about that happening. Because those that ought to be at the very center of solving the problem are ill-equipped, either for one reason or the other. Like it will be said in some spiritual home, what the government of Nigeria suffers today is a foundational problem. It is foundational in many respects. One that you can easily relate with is how even the leadership of the Senate and, of course, the House of Representatives were thrown up. You see, I made the point earlier, and I want to say it again, that all have sinned and have come short of the glory of God. I say this with all sense of responsibility. All that these persons have done, either as individuals or as institutions, do not leave much for people to hope. Do not leave much for confidence. You see, Ndume that we talk about, Ndume was suspended by the Senate. Ndume quietly went to the court. And Ndume case lasted for over 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, before the court now said, no, this man was wrongly suspended. Ndume need to be recalled back. Then you have an Adamu Agege situation. He was suspended. He didn't go to the court first. He first raided and invaded the house with thugs. And today, Ndume that went to the court earlier is the same Ndume that does not want the due process to take its course, as he has now been fingered with allegedly aiding Omo Agege. And there's good reason for that. Like Nelson Mandela said, one man's terrorist is another man's revolutionary. Because there is a commonality of interest now and experience between Ndume and Omo Agege, it is quite logical to say, oh, he must have sympathy for him, he must have aided him, he must have been one that gave him the encouragement with which he brought, allegedly brought us into the hallowed chamber. But all of this, like I said, we must sit down as a people. Maybe the next election will solve it, but I doubt. I do not know how well we are going to be able to cross this very hurdle because it's so high. People said Nigeria needs to be reordered. Nigeria needs to be restructured. And as a matter of fact, the previous regime of Goodluck Jonathan appointed a well-celebrated conference. And that conference came out with a series of recommendations. The recommendation and the report of that panel is gathering dust at the presidency and as well as the legislative houses. There were attempts to amend the constitution. Those recommendations were sent to State House of Assembly. Today, what are we talking about? Only yesterday or so they were able to pass a budget that is meant for this year. So, you see, all of this also boils down to the point we made before. There is a diminishing quality in leadership. You have a people that are not interested in the job. What are they doing there? They have time to travel to America, to Germany, to all countries of the world. And I tell you this, America can never help this country. Germany can never help this country. No matter how many times our president travel, no matter how many times our legislators travel, they will never be able to add anything to this country. I must say that with all sense of responsibility.
Having said that, we're just going to take a quick break, but don't forget that we have one more interest of this program today, which is to talk about the Sheikh El-Zakzaki's detention and all of the circumstances around it. Are there peculiar issues associated with this case? We'll find out just after this short break.
TMI, every opinion counts.
Go straight to our second line of discussion. Let me begin again with you, Chief Thomas. The El Zakzaki's detention has generated so much of discussion as to, one, the circumstances that led to his arrest in the first instance, and then the period during which he has been held, and more importantly, the circumstances of his detention. Let's quickly create a perspective for that.
Thank you. I'll quickly say the circumstances that led to his arrest. The Shiites led by El-Zakzaky were protesting in Zaria. And it coincided with the period the Chief of Army Staff was traveling between Kaduna and Kano. And his guards wanted to use force to disperse the El-Zakzaky's followers who were on the highway. You know, it is common that Nigerians block highways, even students, when they are demonstrating, may burn fires. But rather than taking a civil way to disperse the crowd, they started shooting into the crowd. And that conflagrated the demonstration to the extent of the army moving straight into the house of El-Zakzaky. Arrested him. He was not at the scene of the demonstration. Arrested him, shot him, arrested his wife as well. They put them in detention. And since then, and that was at the beginning of this regime we have in Nigeria, since then, several courts, Femi Falana has been running from different court to different court, and they have all asked, give this man bail. But as it is usual with this government, courts does not matter. Courts are irrelevant. They don't obey orders, and there's nothing like rule of law. Why am I saying this? I'm not surprised, because anybody who was 10 years old as at 1984 will not understand why the present administration's behavior towards the judiciary is like it is. They don't understand. Anybody who was born 74 now don't understand. In 1984, I was already at law school, so I knew what was going on. When Buhari came in as a military president, the first thing was to promulgate Decree number 1 to suspend the Constitution of Nigeria. He passed Decree number 4 to detain, Decree number 2 to detain persons without trial. And no court in Nigeria was allowed to inquire into the legality of the person's detention, not talk of even granting bail. And he was the sole signatory to that decree. Later he changed it. Idiagbon was now made a signatory. Later he now expanded it to include the Inspector General of Police. And it was renewable every 6 months. You'll be detained. And it was then called the ouster clause in our laws. So if they detain you, forget it. Your parents should forget it. No court can do anything about it.
So how do we marry that with the situation in front of us?
Yes. You see, you have a military man who simply changed his uniform. He changed his uniform to Agbada, but the mindset is still military. So when you have such, that is why I keep on saying, we don't want any military man again to rule this country. Because their mindset is always the same. Except that Obasanjo became refined. After going to prison, Obasanjo became refined. He was not detaining people without court order. Jonathan never had one single person detained. Why? He was a bloody civilian. Now, this Buhari regime came and you detained El-Zakzaky, who was not even at the scene of the demonstration. You detained his wife, for God's sake. So the wife offense is that she is vicariously liable for what the sect members did by demonstrating in the street. The wife was at home. And don't forget, Buhari says the wife belongs to the other room.
But again, some media reports says the protest by the Shiites was violent from the onset. That's an important part of this narrative.
What they wanted to know. But what we also got from international media is that it was not violent. It was when the shooting started. Like I told you, it was not even the president who was passing. It was the chief of army staff. He had an advance party. He wasn't close to the scene. So how will it be violent? And we have been told by Obasanjo that soldiers are, no, sorry, Babangida, that soldiers are not trained to build, but trained to destroy. So they go to the scene, rather than dispersing these people, they start shooting. And many were killed. Falana addressed the press on the issue. He showed video clips of all these things. So if you shoot into a set that is known to be violent group, but they were demonstrating peacefully, and you now shoot in, then they will respond in like mind. Even when they have inferior materials to respond. So the demonstration must go from a peaceful demonstration into a violent one. In any case, where in our laws does it say if a man demonstrated violently, he should be detained ad infinitum? Where in the law? Is it in the military law, which does not govern me? Is it in the Sharia law, or is it in the Constitution of Nigeria that if a man demonstrated violently, he should be detained ad infinitum? That is indefinitely.
Barrister Ogiriahi, evidently you are a lawyer. Isn't this a test of judiciary in this country?
It's not just a test for the judiciary, it's a test for democracy. You see, let me first clarify a point. The so-called protest by the Shiite Muslim Islamic movement was not really a protest, whether peaceful or violent. It was a procession that they have regularly done periodically.
So this wasn't the first?
It wasn't the first.
It wasn't the first.
There's a particular day everywhere, I think on a Friday, after they finish from their fellowship or whatever, they go on a procession along a particular road in Kaduna. That was just the same thing they were doing. And the chief of army staff, you know the way we see ourselves in this country, the chief of army staff didn't have that sense of responsibility and patience to tolerate that procession for how long it may last. For as much as he was concerned, it was too big to be head on the way by these common people. Hence, there was now shooting or force being used to compel their dispersal from the way. That was when the thing even degenerated into violence. In fact, the violence was instigated by the Nigerian army. That much have been given credence to by the Amnesty International, who described the killing on that day as extrajudicial killing. So, having made that point clearly, now you have a court order that has said this man should be granted bail for whatever offense that he has committed, should be granted bail. Bail is not an exculpation. Bail is not to say you are free. Bail is to say for as long as your trial lasts, you are free to come from wherever you may wish. If you now breach the terms of that bail, you may be rearrested. That has not happened. Instead, we are seeing a flagrant disrespect and disobedience of an order of court made competently. And that is not too far from the point we have been making. It is said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That is the situation we are dealing with. The only arm of government, perhaps that is vested with constitutional power to moderate between the two other arms and even citizens, ordinary citizens, is the judiciary. We have seen what this government attempted to do at a time against the judiciary.
Taking guns to the house.
When in a Gestapo manner, the houses of judges were invaded and charges were placed upon them. They were raided to court.
Putting guns to their heads at night.
I think it was yesterday. The last man was freed by the code of tribunal.
I think that's still subject to debate now, because the persons have said he wasn't discharged. The court was only, I mean, the CCT was only saying that they didn't have jurisdiction.
But whatever it is, whatever it is, if they didn't have jurisdiction, it shows that those who took it there ought to have done their homework properly.
Okay.
But the point I'm making,
yes,
that show in itself was an attempt to intimidate the judiciary. It showed that people are not doing what they are supposed to do. There is an Attorney General and there is a Ministry of Justice that ought to advise the executive properly on the way to go. If you have reason to believe that judicial officers are corrupt, I also hold that view seriously, that some of our judicial officers are bad eggs. They have no business being there. They are the ones that have brought the judiciary to this sorry situation. They have made the judiciary to bear a bad name to be hung upon it, an ugly name of corruption. Those people need to be weeded out. But you must do it in line with the due process.
It's not by taking gun to your head at night.
By acting against them, unless you are going to, you are not even going against kidnappers in this country in that manner. You go to a judge's house in a guest house, break down doors, break into their bedrooms, and fish them out as if they were common criminals. That in itself, at the early days of this regime, was an attempt to tell you that judicial officers are who they are only because they are tolerated by the executive. So today it now takes the more courageous and God-fearing one to be able to make orders that are not in the interest of the executive. That is where we find ourselves.
Let's take the next 3 minutes to make the most of this situation. Quickly, let's look at, now the court has said it should be returned back to DSS custody.
Yes.
A lot of Nigerians who have followed this case are now concerned about the conditions of detention.
Excuse me.
Let me just let's react to that quickly, and then we'll come back to you, Chief.
The condition of that detention, like I said, the judiciary is also approbating and reprobating.
Okay.
There is a valid order of court that has not been obeyed. That is the order for bail. That has been desecrated in the most annoying manner. Hence, we have seen series of protests by the followers of El-Zakzaky that is almost degenerating on every day that they come out to a violent one. And so the implication of the continuing disobedience to that order is an invitation to anarchy. Let people not have that feeling that some of the things that we hear happen in foreign climes like Algeria, like Egypt, will not happen here. We might just be at the verge of that happening. So I believe the court, who now made a U-turn to say, put this man in DSS custody. I don't know the reason why that order was made, but it's a reversal. Perhaps it is to safeguard and secure the suspect.
No, I disagree with you, please.
I said perhaps, it's not an absolute statement. I said perhaps, but what I'm saying, it is a contradiction in itself. The court ought to have emphasized the need and reiterated the need for the first order to be obeyed, having not been set aside by any superior court.
Please, just make the most of
let me tell you, Dasuki has been in detention right from the second week Buhari came to power. There has been 13 court orders granting him bail. And the president went on TV in Nigeria here, in the presence of journalists. It was telecast live. He said, why will I allow Dasuki and Kanu to go home? And that is the president, head of executive, saying he cannot obey the other arm of government, that is judiciary. The same, I said it's a change of uniform to Agbada. The same president is aware that El-Zakzaky has been released on bail. Now, my little friend was saying it takes the courageous judges. How many are courageous today? Today is Thursday. On Tuesday, El-Zakzaky was taken to a court. He was taken to a court. And I expected that judge to have said, take him away. Don't even make any order as to where he should be kept. Take him away. I am not having anything to do with this matter because another coordinate court of jurisdiction has ordered his bail to be given. Take him away.
I think, incidentally, this is the much of time we have for this discussion.
But they are so scared.
But I must admit that my guests on the program, they've done an excellent job of making sense of these two discussions we've had on the program today. I started talking with Chief A.B. Thomas, constitutional lawyer. Thanks for coming on the program. We appreciate it. And then his colleague, too, of course, a lawyer as well, former member of the State House of Assembly, Friday Ogirahi Esquire. We appreciate your presence on the program. Thank you so much for the value you've brought on TMI this wonderful Thursday morning.